Hi, I'm Melanie, and this is Unfashioned, a podcast about unraveling what no longer fits and re wearing what was always real. Last week, we opened the swimsuit drawer. We talked about what it feels like to stand in front of the mirror, to rediscover the freedom of the water, and to see our bodies not as something to be judged, but as something that is faithfully carried us through every season of our lives. As I stood by the pool at the end of my story, I realized that life has never asked my body to be perfect. It has only asked me to be happy as possible living in it. After a few more laps, I climbed out of the pool and gathered my towel and stood for a moment in the warmth of the afternoon sun. The water was still dripping from my hair, and my swimsuit clung to my skin as it slowly began to dry. It felt so good to stand there for a while, just let the breeze whisper across my shoulders and the sun gently warm my face. I wasn't thinking about anything special. I was just simply enjoying being just who I am and where I was. Then, almost without thinking, I reached for my cover up. It was a lightweight linen shirt that had become a summer staple over the years. The fabric was soft from countless washes, almost sheer in places, and light enough that the breeze could still find its way through it. As I slipped it over my shoulders, something I had never really thought about flashed through my mind. A cover up doesn't really cover you very much at all. You can still see the outline of your swimsuit underneath. You can still catch the glimpses of the sun kissed skin through the loose weaves of the fabric. The light passes through it, and the breeze passes through it. It doesn't erase what's underneath, it simply changes the way it's seen. Standing there, buttoning one or two buttons before I leave the pool, I realized I may have misunderstood cover ups all these years. I always assumed they were meant to hide us, but in truth, they covered our insecurities about summer looks. They protected us from judgments we were sure people were making. Now I think they were never hiding us at all. Maybe they were about allowing ourselves to be seen with more gentle intentions. There's a difference between covering ourselves to disappear, and there is a difference between hiding who we are and choosing with good intentions how we reveal ourselves. Today's story is about that difference. As I slid my arms through the sleeves of the cover up, I noticed something I had somehow overlooked for years. The fabric was so light that I could still see the color of my swimsuit beneath it. Sunlight filtered through the loosely woven threads, warming my skin as though nothing stood between us. The breeze moved easily through the linen, gently lifting the hem as I walked. It rested against my body without feeling heavy. It covered me, but I never felt hidden. The more I looked at it, the more fascinating it became. If a cover up is meant to hide us, then why is it almost always made from fabric that is sheer, airy, and transparent? Why isn't it sewn from thick canvas or heavy denim? Why does it invite the sunlight in instead of shutting it out? And why does it move with the wind instead of standing stiffly between us and the world? The answers seem to be woven into the fabric itself. A cover up doesn't erase what's underneath, it just softens it. It lets the outline of the swimsuit remain visible. It allows glimpses of skin, the warmth of the sun, and the coolness of the breeze to pass freely through. A cover up creates a gentle space between us and the world without pretending there's nothing beneath it. Standing there, I realized how often we think we have only two choices. We either build thick walls around ourselves, revealing nothing at all, or we throw all the doors open and expose every part of who we are. Life rarely asks us to live at either extreme. It allows us time to stay or move between the extremes at our own rate until we reach a comfortable position where we can rest until we feel the need to move again. The healthiest relationships I've known have never been built either way. Trust isn't created by standing behind walls or telling someone everything the moment you meet them. It grows through shared conversations, quiet moments, and small pieces of ourselves offered over time. Like the delicate weave of a cover up, each thread allows another glimpse until one day someone knows us deeply. Not because we revealed everything all at once, but because we revealed ourselves honestly. The cover up suddenly felt less like something that concealed me and more like something that honored what was underneath. It reminded me that authenticity isn't measured by how much of ourselves we expose. It's measured by whether what we reveal is true or not. I let the fabric of my cover up slip through my fingers, feeling how impossibly light it was. When I held it up, the loose weave of the fabric allowed the light to filter through and scatter tiny shadows on the floor. It struck me that the fabric wasn't trying to block the light, it welcomed it. I have never really thought about why cover ups are made this way. They could be sewn from thick fabric that, completely conceals what's underneath. Instead, they're almost always light enough for the breeze to find and sheer enough for a swimsuit beneath to remain part of the story. They don't separate us from summer, they invite us to experience it differently. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the fabric itself was teaching me something. There are seasons in life when we need heavy layers. We wrap ourselves in whatever helps us to survive until the spring returns. But summer asks something different of us. It asks us to let in the warmth we've been protecting ourselves from. A cover up understands that. It doesn't build another wall between us and the season. It creates just enough softness to make the light feel welcoming instead of overwhelming. I wonder if people are meant to be known that way too. Not hidden behind walls so thick that no one can reach us, but also not standing completely exposed before we've learned who can be trusted. Like sunlight passing through linen, trust has a way of arriving gradually. It doesn't force its way in, it simply finds the places that are open enough to receive it. I realized I had misunderstood the purpose of a cover up for years. It never was designed to make me disappear, it was designed to let me remain myself. I folded my cover up over my arm, realizing that there was something I had misunderstood for a long time. I used to believe that protecting part of myself meant I was hiding. I thought authenticity required complete openness, as though every thought, every experience, and every chapter of my life needed to be available to anyone who asked. If I wasn't willing to tell my whole story, I worried that I wasn't being honest. The older I've become, the more I've realized that honesty and accessibility are not the same thing. There are stories I share today that I couldn't have shared 5 years ago. Not because I was ashamed of them, but because I was still living them. I hadn't found enough distance to understand what they meant. Some experiences need time before they become stories. Until then, they're still healing. Writing this podcast has taught me that lesson over and over again. Every episode begins with something in my closet, but it isn't until I sit quietly with the memory that I understand why I've been carrying it. If I had rushed to tell all these stories years ago, they would have sounded very different. I would have been speaking from the middle of pain instead of a place where I could finally see what it had been trying to teach me. The, re- that realization made me think differently about the cover up. I wasn't protecting me because there was something wrong with what was underneath. It was protecting something that still deserved tenderness. There is a quiet wisdom in knowing that not everything needs to be exposed the moment someone asks to see it. Some parts of our lives become more meaningful because they are shared slowly with people who have earned the privilege of holding them carefully. I think we spend so much of our lives apologizing for our boundaries. We worry that saying, "I'm not ready to talk about that," will make us sound closed off or guarded. But there's a difference between shutting people out and allowing trust to unfold naturally. One is built from fear, the other is built from respect. Respect for ourselves, for our stories, and for the people who will one day hear them. Standing there with my cover up resting on my arm, I realized it wasn't encouraging me to disappear. It was reminding me that the most valuable things in life are rarely handed over all at once. They are offered gradually with good intentions and always with care. For the first time, I didn't see the cover up as something that concealed me. I saw it as something that honored what was underneath. The interesting thing about a cover up is that it never really stays on for very long. Eventually, you slip it off and leave it on the back of a chair before walking back into the water. You don't make a big deal about it or stop to wonder if it's the right decision. You simply know the moment has changed and your clothing changes with it. I don't think we always recognize these moments in our lives. Sometimes we spend so long protecting ourselves that we forget we're no longer in the season that required that protection. We keep conversations on the surface and hold pieces of ourselves back, protecting our authenticity. We assume it's safer that way because at one time it probably was. But trust has a quiet way of settling in almost unnoticed until one day you catch yourself saying something you never told anyone before. Not because you planned it or because someone asked, simply because somewhere along the way you stopped feeling the need to keep that part of yourself covered. I've experienced that more than once in my life. Sometimes it happened with a close friend, with someone I was beginning to love. And sometimes, if I'm honest, it happened when I was sitting alone with my journal, finally willing to admit something to myself that I had been avoiding for years. Looking back, none of those moments were really about courage. They were about feeling safe. That's what changes us. Safety has a way of loosening our grip. It reminds us that we don't have to keep holding every part of ourselves so tightly. We can let someone know us a little more deeply. We can tell the story we've been carrying. And we can stop assuming that every vulnerable part of us needs constant protection. I think that's why I love the simplicity of a cover up. It never asks me to choose between hiding or exposing myself. It simply waits until I'm ready to share my authenticity. As you move through this week, I hope you'll think about the cover ups you wear. Not the ones hanging in your closet, but the ones you carry quietly within yourself. We all have parts of our lives that aren't meant for everyone to see immediately. And perhaps that's not something to apologize for. Perhaps it's simply part of being human. Take a moment to ask yourself what you're protecting. Is it something you're still healing from? Is it a dream that's still taking shape? Or a piece of your story that isn't quite ready to be told? Or is there someone in your life who has earned a little more trust? Someone you've slowly been allowing to know the real you. Sometimes the greatest gift we can offer isn't every chapter of our story all at once. Sometimes it's the willingness to let someone turn the page when the time is right. Because authenticity isn't measured by how much of ourselves we reveal, it's measured by whether what we reveal is true. As I thought about the cover up one last time, I realized it had quietly changed the way I saw authenticity. For years, I believed that being authentic meant revealing everything. I thought if people were going to know me, they needed to know all of me, every story, scar, every mistake, every chapter. But life has taught me something different. The most meaningful relationships I've ever had weren't built through instant transparency, they were built through trust. One conversation led to another, one story made room for the next. And over time, what was carefully protected became something I could share freely, not because I had to, but because finally I felt safe. Perhaps that's what a cover up has been trying to teach me all along. It doesn't ask us to hide, it simply reminds us that there is wisdom in revealing ourselves with intention. Some parts of who we are meant to be offered slowly, allowing trust to grow naturally, just as summer folds one warm day at a time. Thank you for spending this time with me. If today's story resonated with you, I'd love for you to leave a review or share with a friend who could use the reminder that authenticity isn't measured by how much of ourselves we reveal, but by the honesty of what we choose to share. You can also find me on Instagram at unfashionedpod and on Substack, where our conversation continues between episodes. Next time, we'll open the closet door once again and reach for another familiar piece of summer clothing as we continue discovering the stories woven into the things we wear. Remember that not everything beautiful has to be revealed all at once. And as always, keep unraveling what no longer fits and re wearing what was always real.